Some people do everything in their power to avoid controversy, but today we're just reading the first page. And apparently this book has been accused of being the most racist book ever written. But I have to ask the question, really? Most racist? More than Mein Kampf? More than, I don't know, there's quite a few racist books out there. But this is a channel about the enjoyment and the challenging nature sometimes of literature. And so we are going to assess this book. It is called The Camp of the Saints by Jean Raspail. And it was written in the 1970s and has gotten some flack and some praise. It was apparently it's been challenged or banned and what have you. Amazon took the book down and then reinstated it. We're just going to read the first page and see what comes of it. Oh, and I should point out as well that this edition that I am reading from is not the latest one. This is the Norman Shapiro translation. This edition is from 1975, so it's a couple years after the original French edition. Let's begin at page 1. The old professor had a rather simple thought. Given the wholly abnormal conditions he had read and reasoned, and even written too much, versed as he was in the workings of the mind, to dare propose anything, even to himself, but the most banal of reflections, worthy of a schoolboy's theme. It was a lovely day, warm but not hot, with a cool spring breeze rolling gently and noiselessly over the covered terrace outside the house. He was one of the last houses up toward the crest of the hill, perched on the rocky slope like an outpost guarding the old brown-hued village that stood out above the landscape, towering over it all, as far as the tourist resort down below, as far as the sumptuous boulevard along the water with its green palms, tips barely visible, and its fine white homes, as far as the sea itself, calm and blue, the rich man's sea, now suddenly stripped of all the opulent veneer that usually overspread its surface, the chrome-covered yachts, the muscle-bulging skiers, the gold-skinned girls, the fat bellies lining the decks of sailboats, large but discreet, and now, stretching over that empty sea, aground some 50 yards out, the incredible fleet from the other side of the globe, the rusty, creaking fleet that the old professor had been eyeing since morning. The stench had faded away at last, the terrible stench of latrines that had heralded the fleet's arrival like thundering before a storm. The old man took his eyes from the spyglass, moved back from the tripod. The amazing invasion had loomed up so close that it already seemed to be swarming over the hill and into his house. He rubbed his weary eye, looked toward the door. It was a door of solid oak, like some deathless mass, jointed with fortress hinges. The ancestral name was carved in somber wood, and the year that one of the old man's forebears, in uninterrupted line, had completed the house, 1673. The door opened out of the terrace from the large main room that served as his library, parlor, and study all in one. There was no other door in the house. The terrace, in fact, ran right to the road, down 5 little steps with nothing like a gate to close them off, open to any and every passer-by who felt like walking up and saying hello, the way they did so often in the village. Each day from dawn to dusk, that door stood open. And it trails off there. Already, actually, I think we have something very interesting happening here. Now, obviously, the topic of this book is going to be controversial because we're dealing with ideas of culture and race and all that sort of thing. But we've already got this interesting idea of basically a fellow who has opened his home to the world in a sort of way, perhaps metaphorically and literally. But his home seems to not have very many doors, and the doors that he does have, he keeps them open, and we're sort of establishing that he has this long lineage and culture and all this sort of thing. I want to say that this is actually interesting enough to where I am going to be turning the first page. I'm going to be turning to the next one, and I'm going to be reading it simply to see what happens. And I guess I should add, for the sake of context, that the concept of this book is essentially a country that is taken over by a ton of immigrants, and it changes the quality of the country for the worse, it seems, though I shall have to keep reading. And thus, the book is controversial, and thus, well, I mean, anytime we're dealing with immigration and race and all that stuff, it gets messy. Again, I know this is going to be a book that is going to upset a lot of people, but I also would like to remind everyone that books are not merely for retreat, as I've said before. Books are, as I see it, are intended to be challenging. They're intended to voice things that we don't always want to see. And as someone who has delved quite frequently into horror, that's basically what that field is all about. Things that people don't want to acknowledge, things that polite society doesn't address, but we talk about it in the form of literature because we can, because it's one of the only ways we really can, and make it a talking point in conversation. There's a lot of books like that cover all sorts of different subjects, and this is just another one. This is a taboo. This is a cultural taboo, talking about this subject, and I think it's worthy, much like other books. A lot of people get weirded out when we talk about historical books. We talk about Mein Kampf or things like that. But I say we should read these books to understand them, at the very least, just so that we understand them, so that we engage with their ideas enough to know what they're talking about. And so then we understand the world we're in a little better, and we understand how other people think, even if we don't agree with them. I think that's powerful. I think that's profound. And I think that's why I'm willing to engage with this one. I think it might disgust. I think it might be horrifying. People are obviously going to be of different minds about it, but that might also be what makes it great. So I'm going to keep reading. If you have other books that you would like to suggest, books of this category that are very challenging, not necessarily on this exact topic, but if you would like to talk about books that perhaps upset you when you read them, or books that made you really think about something you didn't want to think about, let me know, because I'll check those out too. And let me know if you've read Camp of the Saints, or if you'd like to read Camp of the Saints, or if you wouldn't like to read Camp of the Saints, and let me know what you thought.